Thank you very much indeed. Michael, let's turn to this first off about what's happening in Syria. It is almost deja vu, isn't it? You got a bad guy, to many people's eyes, a dictator who may have unleashed chemical weapons. If it is verified that he has, and clearly with Saddam Hussein, although he had in the past, when push came to shove after the invasion, it turned out he hadn't got any chemical weapons. But if it turns out Assad has got them and has used them against the rebels, what is the proportionate reaction that should come from America?
Well, let's put this into context. The chemical weapons that Saddam Hussein had used on the Kurds were given to him by us, the American people. He was our ally. We funded him, we armed him, we helped him with an 8-year war against Iran. The so-called weapons of mass destruction, which of course the weapons inspectors knew were not there. Everybody knew that they weren't there. The weapons we've given him in the past, we never talk about this. We never talk about how we are the ones who actually help these dictators around the world. Now, as far as Assad and Syria goes, you know, I just think as Americans now, whenever we're told anything, somebody comes on and says there's reports, it may be this, it may be that, we have to have the most skeptical, critical eye and ear to what we're being told.
See, that's my problem with it. It's like, here we go again. We were told Saddam had chemical weapons and was about to use them. Now we're told Assad has. And many will say this is just a pretext for going in and going into some kind of advanced war with Assad. How do we know who to believe here? Well,
you start by not believing the people who lied to you before. The American government lied to its own people. I mean, honestly, I don't know of a worse lie one could tell other than a lie to take a country to war, to make up things, to take people to war. That's just got to be the most obscene, immoral thing to do. So this government hasn't earned the right to be trusted. If it says Assad has chemical weapons, or if it says Ahmadinejad has a nuclear weapon.
But it's not this government, is it, that went to war with Saddam? And you have to differentiate.
Which government? You're talking about Obama versus Bush?
Yes.
No, I'm talking about the real government. Wall Street, the banks, the corporations, the people that made $2.1 trillion is what we spent on the Iraq war. Who made that money? Soldiers in the field? I don't think so. No. This is always about the people who have the purse strings and the politicians who are bought off by them. And so if they come on now and tell me anything about this, you know, Ahmadinejad is building a bomb, really? Well, I'll believe it, you know, when he walks in the room here with it and shows it to me. Frankly, I mean, that's just how much I would not trust anything being said by the military-industrial complex of this great country.
When you see what happens in just today in Baghdad, 55 people killed in, I think, 17 different bombings, 2 other assassinations took place, 200 plus people wounded. That's a typical day in Baghdad.
That's right.
Over the last few years. I mean, this is not peace. This is not democracy. This is not freedom.
Right. Now,
what is it?
Right. What it is first of all, we set this thing up to where we supported the Shiites and the Sunnis are now, and now there's going to be a version of a civil war. Right now, as we speak here live on CNN, there's an alternate reality taking place on another network. And they're over there today saying how great it is, Iraq's free.
You mean Fox?
Yes, I don't really want to, you know, disparage them.
Well, Donald Rumsfeld, let me read a tweet from Donald Rumsfeld.
Yeah, okay.
10 years ago began a long, difficult work of liberating 25 million Iraqis. All who played a role in history deserve our respect and appreciation.
Well, he's a war criminal, as far as I'm concerned. I don't understand why he, Bush, Cheney, Wolfowitz are still walking the streets. You know, they can get away. The way they're trying to revise history now is by saying, well, it was a mistake, or we were given bad information. You know, if let's say somebody sent a tweet to us right now, or sent me an email that said, Goldman Sachs downtown right now in their basement, they have kidnapped children and they're holding them there, and I then tell the police this. What will happen to me when they go down to Goldman Sachs and find out that there's actually no kids kidnapped in the basement of Goldman Sachs? And you, of course, you would think I would want to go after Goldman Sachs as Bush wanted to go after Saddam. But I think I'd be arrested. I think I'd be arrested if I produced false information. And to just say it's a mistake, you know, it's if somebody ran over your 4-year-old, they get out of the car and they go, oh, I'm sorry. Mistake.
I mean, I heard today a former British Deputy Prime Minister, John Prescott, who was Tony Blair's deputy, And Britain had the same thing. You know, we were told Saddam has weapons of mass destruction. That is why we're taking British troops to war. It was a completely false pretext. And I heard him today saying, well, I changed my mind now. It was a mistake. We shouldn't have done it. It's a bit late, isn't it? A bit late in the day.
Yeah.
Tony Blair is standing by what he did. George Bush stands by what he did.
What happens to
but to say simply, well, we got it wrong. But
Yeah.
if you get a
Well, that's
war
not good
wrong,
enough.
what are the repercussions?
Unless there are repercussions, unless we do take Blair and Bush and Cheney and these guys to task right now, still, if this doesn't happen, what's the message to future presidents and prime ministers? They're like, wow, those guys got away with that, and that was like a bunch of malarkey. How did they ever get away with that? I think that I mean, it's very depressing in Iraq, isn't it? You look at it now, you see that the Kurds in the north basically have their own seceded country in a way. They have their own passports, I'm told now. So they're completely distinct from the rest of Iraq. You have the Shias who were afforded power by America, by the Allied forces, but of course, when they did that, they removed all infrastructure. Right.
You know, I've read a very interesting piece by Fareed Zakaria today, my CNN colleague, about the difference between what happened in Iraq and what, say, Mandela did in South Africa. That when he took power there, rather than getting rid of all the other people in power, both militarily and politically, he kept most of them in place. He brought them inclusively in to his new South Africa. As a result, there was no insurgency.
We did that
America and
with
Britain
the Germans.
and other countries did the complete opposite.
Right.
They dismantled all the infrastructure.
Right.
Everything Ba'athist was removed.
Right.
That is what created this vacuum that created the insurgency from Sunnis who went, you know what? Okay, if that's the way you're going to treat us, we're going to be insurgents.
Well, we had some crazy people in charge, and they installed not very bright people to be in charge of Iraq, if you remember that at the beginning. People that had no training, had no military training, didn't know anything about anything, and these were the people calling the shots. 10 years ago tonight, in this hour that we're sitting in right now.
It was in this hour, yeah.
At
Shocking all began.
9:42 p.m. Eastern Time, the bombing started. And the fact that no one has paid for this, for this criminal act, that why would an American such as George W. Bush send thousands of Americans off to their deaths? For what reason? And why doesn't he have to answer for that? I just I'm going to look. I said this back then. I took a lot of hit for it. Everybody told me they were going to be weapons of mass destruction. A lot of people said things at work. They said things at school. People watching the show will remember. They were ostracized. You weren't. You couldn't say anything. The Dixie Chicks lost their career. I mean, they were finished. Other people lost jobs. It was
total mess.
Because we were told at that time in a democracy, we are not allowed to dissent. We are not allowed to ask questions. And they learned from Vietnam and the previous wars. Don't put these images on the screen. Don't let them see the coffins coming back home. And let's get our media embedded with them.
Let's end this segment just by reading. These are the results of the CNN ORC poll recently about Iraq. They were asked, would you say the initial decision to send US troops to Iraq was a smart or dumb thing to do? Americans replied 59% dumb, 38% smart. Was Iraq war a mistake? Yes, 56%. No, 43%. And so on and so on. I mean, every one of these. Did the Bush administration deliberately mislead the US public about WMD? Yes, 54%. No, 44%.
That's why this is a great country. Actually, the majority of Americans got it together. The majority of Americans, though, are never listened to. We're going to talk about guns, in a few minutes.
Well, I've got to take a break.
No one's being listened to.
I want to, because this brings me neatly to guns, because there's so much going on with that at the moment, not least of which Harry Reid basically saying you can forget about an assault weapons ban.
Yeah,
let's talk about that after break,
okay,
because I'm sure you're as angry about that as I am.
Yeah, what a weenie.